Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel Legal Decipher. In the previous video, we had discussed about Chapter 6 of the Indian Penal Code 1860. If you have not seen that video, you can go and check it. The link is in the description below. In today's video, we are going to talk about Chapter 7 of the Indian Penal Code. We'll go through the chapter and try to understand the substance therein. So if you are new here, please like and subscribe to my channel so you can get the video notifications. So let's get started. So today we are going to discuss Chapter 7, which talks about offences relating to the Army, Navy and the Air Force. So this chapter is not that much important for the purposes of any competitive exam or course exams, but still I'm going to explain this chapter and I'm going to quickly describe the contents of this chapter. Now section 131 talks about abetting mutiny or attempting to seduce a soldier, sailor or airman from his duty. So any person who tries to abet a mutiny or attempts to seduce a soldier, sailor or airman, basically any personnel of the armed forces, then that person will be punished with imprisonment for life or with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 10 years and shall also be liable to fine. Now explanation says that in this section the words officer, soldier, sailor and airman include any person subject to the Army Act, the Naval Discipline Act, the Indian Navy Discipline Act or the Air Force Act, as the case may be. Like I said, all the personnels of the armed forces include. Now section 132 talks about abatement of mutiny if mutiny is committed in consequence thereof. So whoever abets the commission of a mutiny between the officers, soldiers, sailors or airmen in the armed forces, then that person will be punished with death or imprisonment for life or imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 10 years and shall also be liable to fine if such mutiny is committed in consequence of that abatement. Now section 133 talks about abatement of assault by soldier, sailor or airman on his superior officer when in execution of his office. So when an armed forces personnel is assaulting his superior officer who is executing his duty in his office, then that personnel of the armed forces who had assaulted his superior officer will be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 3 years and shall also be liable to fine. Now section 134 talks about abatement of such assault if the assault committed. So whoever abets the assault on any superior officer who is executing his duty in his office, then that person who has so abated the assault shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 7 years and shall also be liable to fine if such assault was committed in consequence of that abatement. Now section 135 talks about abatement of desertion of soldier, sailor or airman. So whoever abets the desertion, now desertion means to leave behind one's duty when he was commissioned to discharge his duty in the armed forces. So whoever illegally deserted the armed forces is said to have committed the act of desertion. Now whoever has abated such desertion of any armed forces personnel, that person who has so abated shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 2 years or with fine or with both. Now section 136 talks about harboring deserter. So whoever has deserted the armed forces and is now being harbored or sheltered by someone else, now that person who is harboring or sheltering such deserter will be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 2 years or with fine or with both. Now only one exception is there, that is this provision does not extend to the case in which the harbor is given by a wife to her husband. So if the wife is giving such harbor to her husband who is the deserter, then that will be an exception. that wife will not be charged under section 136. Now section 137 talks about deserter concealed on board merchant vessel through negligence of master. So say for example there is a merchant vessel and that merchant vessel has a master who is in charge of that merchant vessel, who operates that merchant vessel. Now due to his negligence, there is a deserter who has concealed himself on board such merchant vessel, who is a deserter from the armed forces of India. Then that merchant vessel master on whose negligence such deserter had concealed himself on board that merchant vessel, that master will be penalized for 500 rupees each day until that deserter is caught. So as long as the deserter is concealed on board that merchant vessel, that master of such merchant vessel will be fined 500 rupees per day during which the deserter had concealed himself on board. Now section 138 talks about abatement of act of insubordination by soldier, sailor or airman. So whoever is an armed forces personnel and he abates any act that he knows is an act of insubordination, then if such act of insubordination is committed in consequence of that abatement, then that person who has abated such insubordination will be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 6 months, or with fine, or with both. Now section 139 talks about persons subject to certain acts. So no person who is subject to the Army Act or the Naval Discipline Act or the Indian Navy Discipline Act or the Air Force Act is subject to punishment under this code for any of the offences defined in this chapter. So section 139 excludes all those personnels of the armed forces from being subject to punishment under this code for any offences that is defined in this chapter. They are not punished under this code, they are court-martialed according to those acts that are mentioned here. Now section 140, which is the last section of this chapter, talks about wearing garb or carrying token used by soldier, sailor or airman. So any person who is not a sailor, soldier or a military or a naval or air serviceman, but he wears or carries any garb or any token that resembles to that of which is used by an actual soldier, sailor or airman, with the intention that by wearing such garb or by carrying such token, that person who is not a member of the armed forces may be believed that he is actually a soldier, sailor or airman. So he is basically committing a fraud, he is committing a deceit, that he is not an armed forces personnel, but he is carrying such token or wearing such garb that deceives other people, and those other people thinks that he is actually a member of the armed forces, while actually he is not. He is just carrying any such token or wearing any such garb that resembles to those garbs or tokens that are used by actual armed forces personnels. So if he commits any such kind of fraud or deceit, then he shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 3 months, or with fine which may extend to 500 rupees, or with both. So that's all in this video. If you like my videos, then don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching this video.